The world of entrepreneurship and owning your own business and being a photographer can get very overwhelming, especially with all the hats you have to wear. Whether it's photo editor, client relationships, administrative assistant, the actual photographer, all the business stuff that goes into it, it can get overwhelming. And you know I'm a huge fan of outsourcing. So today I just want to give you one very efficient, very quick practice that I do when I get overwhelmed with tasks and I know it's time to start outsourcing something. So I'm just going to walk you through really quickly something you can do right now that will give you clarity on what to outsource and in what order. Let's discuss. Welcome back, my friends, to the next episode. It's so nice to see your lovely face here today. And if you're new here, my name is James Woody. My wife, Jess, and I have been professional wedding photographers over the past decade for myself, 15 years for Jess, my wife. We have photographed over 350 weddings around the world, and now we get to teach other creatives like you how to thrive in business and in life. And like I just said, I want to give you really briefly a practice that you can do right now when you're ready to start outsourcing. Or maybe you don't know if you're ready to start outsourcing, and this will give you clarity. So the first thing you're gonna do, this is the practice and this is how it starts. Either get a big sheet of paper, and I prefer to do this physically, and you'll see because you're gonna start to move things around, or what I prefer is a stack of 3x5 cards. If you don't have 3x5 cards, no need to have an excuse, cut up some paper, and it's super simple. And on those things, on those 3x5 cards, I want you to list out everything you do as a business owner, including things that aren't business tasks, but throughout the day that take up your time. So if I were to write this down, whenever I write this down, I kind of start from the top for Jess and I, because we do this together. Photographing the wedding, emails, editing, culling, designing the wedding album, cleaning the house, cooking, everything, literally laundry, everything that goes into your days, because as a business owner, you don't really have that luxury of not taking home work with you. It's all intertwined, and I prefer it that way. But when you're kind of feeling out your tasks and what to outsource, you kind of have to put everything in your life on there so you know where your priorities are. So once you have that list, whether they're on 3x5 cards or just a piece of paper, what I want you to do is I want you to read down that list again. To hit a reset, maybe have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whatever your style is, and I want you to read down that list. And I want you to either put a star or a check mark next to everything that when you read strikes joy in you, that you get a little shot of dopamine, like, oh, I actually love that. Whatever those things are, maybe it's one or two tasks, maybe it's a lot of those tasks, and that's the first step of this. Go through and mark down what brings you joy, what you love to do in your job and when you're at home, whatever it is. That's step one. So step two, and this is something I learned from Tim Ferriss reading The 4-Hour Workweek. If you have not read that book, I highly, highly recommend it. It's packed full of amazing, amazing things. Take it with a grain of salt, just like all books, but it's an amazing book. And what he recommends, and in this order, is the delete, automate, and delegate. So what you're gonna do on 3 separate cards, or draw 3 columns, and you're gonna write delete on one, you're gonna write automate on the next one, and then you're gonna write delegate on the 3rd card. And in that order, delete is pretty self-explanatory. Delete, get rid of it. Anything that you can just completely cut out, not give it to someone else, not automate it, you don't have to do it. No one has to do it. It shouldn't belong in your life or business. The second one is automate. Automate specifically means software or technology, something that you can hand off to technology, not another person that can do that task for you. And then the third is delegate. Delegate has to do with a human. Is there a human or a service that's run by people that's not just software that you can hand off tasks to? And those are the 3 things that you can outsource. Those are the 3 ways you can outsource. You can get rid of something completely, you can find a software that does it, or you can find another human or human service that does it. Now, what I want you to do is the next step in this is go through that entire list or all those cards of your tasks. And I'd be willing to bet that there is at least one task in that list that can fit into each one of these categories. I'm willing to challenge you that there's probably one thing you can delete, one thing you can automate, and one thing you can delegate. The question is whether you should or are going to, and in what order. For instance, if I'm going through my list, I'm going to start with delete. So when you go through your list, you're going to start, is there anything I can delete? Is there anything that does not belong in my life or business that I can just get rid of and it won't make a difference, or maybe it will make a good difference? And that can be really challenging, getting rid of something, because if you're anything like me, a lot of my ideas are attached to my heart, and a lot of the things I created that sometimes I might have to delete because they're not efficient or they're not good, or their time has just run out of being productive for my business. It's hard to get rid of those things, but sometimes it's necessary. So for instance, for me, if you're going to try to delete something, maybe it's an app that you used to have productivity with. Maybe it's a certain type of ad campaigns that's not turning over as efficiently. For me personally, years and years ago, when Jess and I first got married, we were asked so often if we had a photo booth. So I just built one. I built a photo booth and we would offer it to our clients. And throughout coordinators and everyone else and bridesmaids and everyone else getting to know the photo booth, it became its own business. And for years it was thriving and it was crushing. And honestly, even a few years ago, it still was, but it was such an overwhelming part of my mind that I had outsourced as much as I could. I automated, I delegated, all those things, but I realized that's not allowing me to fully take advantage of what I'm trying to build in our main business here. So I deleted it. It's a hard decision, sold it, got rid of it. Good riddance, but it was a really good decision. It was a really hard decision because I built that thing from the ground up. But the productivity and everything else skyrocketed because that tab was shut off on my mind. So whatever it is, whether it's like I said, an app, or you've been spending too much time on Clubhouse, or whatever it is that's kind of a time drain that you can get rid of. Maybe it's a group you're a part of that just isn't, you're just going through the motions and it's not productive anymore. Giving you permission to get rid of those things that aren't benefiting your life or drastically benefiting others because you're a part of it. Step 1, delete. Once you've gone through that list to delete, this is my favorite part, is the automate part. What can you automate with software, or partially automate with software, that can make your life significantly easier? For me, I automate my scheduling. So instead of client communications back and forth, whether it's a coaching call or whether it's with the bride and groom or a couple, whatever it is, instead of going back and forth, what good works for you? What day works good for you? I have a Calendly link, and Honeybook actually has their own calendar now. I send it to them. They can see the dates I'm available on the time slots, and they pick it, and we don't even have to communicate back and forth. They just tell me when it works for them because they already know my schedule. That saves me a lot of emails and just a lot of back and forth, and they can reschedule if they want to. I also automate my emails. So not 100%, but if you go a few videos back, I'll link it at the end here. Honeybook, I auto-generate, I have templates for my emails, and that's automated. When I get an inquiry response, it comes up with an inquiry response that I pre-wrote, and that's 90% of it. I type in a few personal notes and I press send. Those are just ways to automate what you're doing. I always make the joke that I automate my vacuuming because Jess got me a Roomba for my birthday last year, and it's fantastic. I automate my vacuuming to a robot vacuum, and I think it's just wonderful. So go through that list, whatever it is, and what can amazing technology take care of for you. The third thing you're gonna do, the last one, is you're gonna go through delegate. Delegate in its last because, one, obviously you delete first, because if you don't need it, you shouldn't be paying someone or software to outsource it. And the second is automate, because it's easier if you can just turn on a software and it works, instead of going through hiring someone or a company that, the delegate part, although delegating is a remarkable thing. So go through and figure out what you can delegate. For Jess and I, what we do, we delegate a lot of things. We delegate admin to a virtual assistant who helps with emails and corresponding to all these things. We outsource house cleaning, because when we work in our house and our office is in our house and all those things, it's easy to just not clean when you're on a task, when you're in work mode. So we just automate that because I was spending way too much time doing that. There's also a hybrid, there's kind of a hybrid in between automate and delegate. So for instance, our meals, we use Freshly, and they're just pre-made meals. I would consider that both because it's automated. I just pay for a service, and obviously there's people making and delivering those meals, but it's that hybrid in between. So that way I just have to put it in on the stove or in the oven, heat it up, and I don't have to do anything. That's an amazing way to outsource. So go through those lists and start to write down potentially, when you're going through all these things, it doesn't mean you're gonna delete it or automate it or delegate it. It means the things you potentially can. So go through all of those things. And the reason I like the 3x5 cards is I'll have them all laid out with my 3 tabs, and I'll just start reorganizing everything. Be like, okay, I can delete this, or maybe I can't delete this, and start seeing the potential. So what you should be left with is a 3-column list of a lot of your tasks that you could potentially delete, automate, or delegate. Like I said, it doesn't mean you had to, but that's just the next step. The step you're on right now is just potentially seeing what you can outsource. And what you should be left with is hopefully, and I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt because it's not always perfect and rarely is it perfect, but what you're probably gonna be left with is a handful of cards that have a star or check mark are the things that bring you joy, that you're not going to outsource or don't even think about outsourcing because you love them so much. And that's amazing. But what's probably gonna happen is you probably have a few with stars or check marks that bring you joy that you were like, oh, I can automate that or I can delegate that. And that's really what I want to talk about, because this is really, really what stops the vast majority of people from outsourcing anything, is they think, oh, I actually love doing this. And I think that's an amazing thing. In fact, there's things on my list that I don't outsource because it brings me so much joy. I could easily have people who clean our house take care of all my house plants. I have 34 and counting right now, and it's a little bit of upkeep, especially when you travel, but it brings me a lot of joy, and it's something I really, really like. I also really like editing video. So right now, I'm not outsourcing that. I could, absolutely, but it's something that I'm challenging myself to get better and better at, so I'm not outsourcing it right now. Maybe, just maybe, on one of your lists is editing. You know, editing, you might have a card that says editing on it, and you might have a star on it, and it's in that delegate. You know, it's in that delegate pile. Like us, we use Freedom Edits because we outsource editing and culling. And you might be thinking, I really like this. It actually brings me joy. I'm really good at it. And this is kind of where there's that breaking point with outsourcing. Sometimes you have to be willing to give up something good in order to replace it with something great. And for Jess and I, this was a struggle with editing and culling because Jess, I don't edit. Jess is really good at it and she really did enjoy it. But we did some math and realized once she started outsourcing, this is a real number, I give you my word. Once she started outsourcing editing, she saved 60 8-hour work days a year, 9 to 5. So if you're putting that in a Monday through Friday job, 9 to 5, that's 3 months of work at a desk just editing. Once we heard that number, it was like, great, outsource that because editing's good, but she replaced it with great things. Great things like she started a whole boudoir side of business that she crushes at. She has more free time. We're able to build courses together because we have more time. We're able to educate more and build up sides of our business that are great. So when you're going through this and you're thinking, I'm really good at that and it does spark joy in me, take a deep breath and think, okay, this is good and I respect this task that does bring me joy. But if I outsource this, what could I do that's great? And that doesn't even have to be business. You know what's better than editing? Spending time with your family. Maybe it's spending time with your kids. Maybe it's working on your business instead of being an employee of your business. You know what's better than editing sometimes? Free time. Just not sitting at a desk for 5 hours after a shoot and editing and culling a wedding. Sometimes that's just a greater thing. So whatever it is that you're thinking, I'm really good at, but I could replace it with something great, just think, what else could I do instead of this task that is great, that's gonna make a greater impact on my life, family, or business. And as you're going through this, it can get overwhelming. The 2 things to keep in mind. 1, this is not all happening at once. In fact, I recommend only doing 1 to 2 things at a time. You're not gonna go through that whole list and be like, oh, I'm gonna get rid of this, I'm gonna outsource this and delegate this all in a week's time. That's overwhelming and that turns into management because you kind of need to acclimate to each thing, especially with the bigger tasks. And the second thing to keep in mind to encourage you to try, you can always go back. You can outsource whatever you want, delete whatever you want, and it's not permanent. you can always bring it back in and you can always do it yourself again. So just to encourage you, try it and don't do it all at once. What I do recommend is that the easy one is the delete. Try it and understand it can come back. And the chain of command is I use is, if I outsource this, if you're gonna choose one thing, which one thing, if you outsource, is gonna give you the most bang for your buck? What is gonna give you the most freedom in mental space and clarity and freedom of time? That's how it goes, because even though sometimes it costs a little bit to outsource, that payoff of trade-off of a little bit to outsource for 60 days back a year, I'll take that any day of the week. So you might be thinking right now, maybe, I was using the example editing a lot. And if for some reason right now, editing or culling is what is on the top of your list and you've thought about it before and you think, maybe I'm gonna try right now. Jess and I use Freedom Edits. They are great friends of ours. We're actually ambassadors for them. I have a link for you below to check out Freedom Edits. It's gonna benefit you. If you check it out, it's gonna benefit us because we're ambassadors, and I only recommend services and products that I believe in and that I actively use. And that is the reason we have 68-hour workdays back a year. Man, even if it was 5 hours back a week, wouldn't you want to trade that off to do something great or to spend more time with your family? Or maybe you're thinking, I need to start getting a software to start automating emails and client management and all those things. I've also linked HoneyBook down below, another company that we're ambassadors for, and that's gonna give you 50% off your first year. It's gonna benefit you, it's gonna benefit us as affiliates, so it's a win-win situation. So if you wanna check those out, they're linked below. And overall, something that I really love about outsourcing is I just think of all those tasks you wrote down, those are all tabs in your mind. At some point, those are circling around either like a pinball in your head or they're just tabs like you have open. Sometimes, on your phone when you have like Safari open and you have like a billion tabs, that's so stressful to me. That's what's going on in your mind with all those tasks. If you're able to nail those down into automations or into delegating it, or even just having it in a system, you can start to shut those tabs off in your mind so you actually have more mental space and clarity. I think that's just a remarkable thing. So even if it's just worth mental clarity and a lack of stress in your head, it's one of the biggest benefits of outsourcing. Go ahead and check those links out below if you're interested in outsourcing editing or client relationships. Two amazing softwares. And if you outsource, let me know what you guys outsource and let me know the top of the list. If you've chosen right now, I'm gonna outsource this, let me know in the comments. If you guys have not yet, I would love if you subscribe to this channel. I'm in here daily giving content, taking you on our adventures, everything in between. So until next time, I hope you can take this, make that list, automate a few things in your business to give you more free time so you can focus on greater things in life and business. Until next time, my friends, I will see you in the next video.